to this computer. Hey guys, it's Holistic Health with Harry back on the interviews, and today I'm joined by a very special friend that I've known on Facebook for a long time, who interviewed me once back in the day, and now I'm more than just returning the favors. I want to unpack her life story. This is Alexis, I want to unpack her life story and all she's about. I'm just going to read a bio for Alexis. So, Alexis Hart is a certified transformation, imagination, and manifestation coach who helps uncover and release blocks that keep people stuck in repeating patterns. Through deep, personalized guided imagination sessions, she supports clients to rewrite the narrative shaping their lives so they can step into the life they truly desire. She's also a devoted near death experience researcher since 2012 and student of non duality work such as A Course in Miracles and Neville Goddard's teachings for many years as well. So, with that introduction, hi, Lex, how are you?
I'm great, Harry. It's so good to see you.
Yeah. I'm excited for this, not just because we've known each other for such a long time, but as I've gone along on my journey, I've always resonated with your stuff, but as you've gone into your power and sharing your truths on a deeper level, I've also started to clarify what I want out of my soul contract and what I need for my healing. So
Mm.
I'm more than happy today to unpack with you um, what you want to share with us. But I guess at the beginning, if you want to, you can share a little bit of your background and story and how you find yourself in this position as a healer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Well, I don't know if you're kind of familiar with life path numbers, but my life path number is 7, and that notoriously is known for being a seeker, like a lifelong seeker. So my interest in spirituality started very young. I had a mystical experience growing up in New Orleans at the age of 16. It was an audible voice that literally told me to get out of New Orleans. I knew intuitively that it woke me out of a dead sleep, first of all, but all it said was, it's time to go, very stern. And it shook my whole being. And when that happened, and I ran to all the doors, like someone's there. It was almost like my higher self or Holy Spirit was saying, it's time. This is the marker, right? And I knew intuitively I was supposed to live with my dad, who was always seeking knowledge, reading the scripture, very devout spiritual man, but I couldn't really put him in a box if I tried because we'll get to that. It was a little confusing, but I knew I was supposed to live with him. So I came up to North Carolina at the young age of 16 and started a monastic journey. It was very separated from the world. I was doing a lot of fasting and prayer. I read the scripture through and through twice during those years. And I was there from like 16 until I was 29. So this wasn't like a short run. This was like 18 years of like unfolding within me the discipline that was required to have some of these questions answered. And it took a long time for that to unfold because I was struggling with the ego and the desires of a 20-year-old.
Mm.
I was celibate as well, so that's a little note to add. That was also a difficult part of the time. And yet, even though I was struggling a lot with the physicality of the process, I had a lot of beautiful things happen during those years that started to show within my heart that there was a lot more to the story than just the Bible, right?
Yeah.
I had an out-of-body experience that was very powerful during those years. And I knew that it was just beyond what the mind can really understand given the information that we are here in this society. So it led me to first awakening in the dream a little bit about what we've been told on the television, right? I started reading David Icke's information at a certain point, getting really deep into like the lies that we've been told and kind of unraveling the onion, unlayering all this stuff. And that was shocking for a few years. And then that led me eventually to some more metaphysical work. The Course in Miracles showed up in my life when I finally did exit my dad's world. Um, Metaphysical information just started flooding in. And the Course was a really big eye opener because it was basically saying, there is no such thing as separation. God cannot be separate from himself or itself, right? Source cannot separate from itself. So I don't know. It was a very deep time in my life. And then when I got married at the age of 29, my husband at the time was not a spiritual man. And I was doing a lot of this study on the side while raising children and, youngins and gardening and being a stay-at-home mom and, trying to do it all. So going through that period in my time in my life, like 30, early 30s after coming through all that stuff, I was very confused about the world. My dad kept me very cloistered for those years. So coming back into a marriage and trying to get, back into the world a little bit and know people and kind of maneuver, it was kind of like coming out of a cult, mentality.
Yeah.
And this was interesting because there was a certain point where I read Embraced by the Light by Betty Eadie. It's a really powerful near-death study book where she dies and crosses over. And I read that cover to cover in 2012, and I was married at the time, and I had been very much still drinking the Kool-Aid of what my dad was kind of handing me, which was a lot of biblical judgment of the world, by the way. Like he was kind of a harsh dude when it came to like his perception of mankind. And so that book cracked my heart wide open. And I
Mhm.
went into my bedroom and I just sobbed because it resonated so deeply that God is not to be feared. Like the Old Testament God is scary. Like I don't know if you've read it, but like it's
Yeah.
scary. It's not the God that I know, right? It's
No.
not the God that a lot of people come to know. And so when I read that book, it mirrored my heart for him. It mirrored my heart for source. It mirrored my heart for mankind. It just cracked me wide open, and then I couldn't get enough. And ever since that point, I began also studying in NDEs quite a bit and researching. I just at least three or four a day sometimes I was studying from 2012 until now. So it's been thousands at this point, and yet I do that because it reminds me each and every day what's important. I think one of the biggest lessons I really got from that study was that, we immediately go through a life review. When people go over and they die, they have to see all of the ways that they treated all these other people in their lives. And they have to sit on the other side of the table as the other people did and feel the way that they treated that person. And when I heard that consistently, these testimonials of people from all over the world saying the same thing, it struck me that I don't want to go over at the end of my life and have to experience pain that I caused. I don't
Mhm.
want to go through that. So it shifted the way that I saw people, enough to where I was really very mindful, even then, in my early 30s, that, okay, I'm going to live my life with integrity. I'm going to live my life the way I want the reflection to come back. I want to do unto others exactly as I would have them do unto me, right? So that shifted a lot. But then my dad was not able to handle some of the studies because, he was very Bible based and he knew a God that was a very like wrathful God. So when I started studying like A Course in Miracles and NDEs, he was like, well, Christ said, he would use Christ's words against me and he'd say stuff like, how can two walk together save they agree? Right? Which on the surface is true, but it's also coming from a man who was friends with every prostitute, pauper, like every part of humanity. Christ was trying to show everyone their infinite possibility, their God state, their divinity. And here my dad's using these words in a way to like say, like in a divisive separation way, like, no, we can't walk together because we don't agree exactly the way that, I see things. You don't agree with that. So out you go, right? So
Yeah.
my dad kind of rejected me completely. And
Mm.
it led me and my ex-husband to go to Florida and leave the state for a while and just kind of start over and press reset. And it was interesting because I had never, being celibate all those years in my 20s, I didn't really sow any wild oats very much. Like even growing up in New Orleans, even though I did a little bit of, like some crazy times there, some rebellion, years, I really didn't have the chance to date or like, explore relationships the way that my heart wanted to. And so when we went to Florida, my marriage fell apart because I was awakening and I had gone through all this work for all these years in the marriage, and he had been kind of uninterested.
Hmm.
So in Florida, we decided to separate, and that brought me into a path of, kind of exploring some of the 3D, like going out and to bars and having drinks with people and getting to know like, just total strangers. And I went off the path for a little bit in my mind. Like I needed that time to kind of take it easy and just rest.
Yeah.
Because when you're a seeker, as long as I have been, I I just feel like sometimes there's a time to put the Bible down or time to put the book down for a little bit, right? And have some humanity, in your life. And that's what happened. I kind of got in touch with that humanity side. And it showed me a lot about the progress I had made because I was still able to hold space with people and have a lot of compassion for people's lives, even though they may have, no clue what they were doing to themselves by the way they were treating others. I was able to hold space and see myself in them. And I don't know, it was just helpful. And after a few years, it got to a place where I was like, you know what? I'm 2020 came around, stuff started to get real and real silent. All of a sudden, you're in your house all the time, and um, all the years of study with the metaphysical work led me really into listening more intently in 2020 to some of the things like Wayne Dyer and Joe Dispenza and all these people I had been reading for years casually. Now I was really starting to hear some of the inspiration that was coming from their walk. Like Wayne Dyer, he kept mentioning this guy Neville Goddard, and
Hmm.
he based a few of his major books on Neville's work. And I was like, well, who is this Neville guy, right?
Hmm.
Well, that was interesting because when I did look up Neville, it hit me like a ton of bricks that I had kind of been practicing a lot of what he had been saying anyway. But if no one's, if they're not familiar, I'll just tell you that Neville Goddard was a mystic from like the 1920s or the early 1900s. He was from Barbados and he moved to the US to like start a dancing career right before the Great Depression hit. And when the Depression hit, he started studying with a good friend of his, Abdullah, who was like a Jewish mystic himself. And all this beautiful information started coming out where he was having mystical experiences with it. And he started teaching the information. At a time when people were in breadlines, he was telling people, go
Hmm.
into your Christ consciousness. Use this gift. This is a gift. This is your creatorship gift. If you get in touch with it, it's like a muscle. You can lose a muscle can atrophy. So if you use it and you build it, everything that you put into that Christ consciousness will mirror back for you in the third dimension. It's like it's almost like you're overlaying the 4D onto the 3D because the 4D, they say if you go into that dimension, that if you just think a thought, it immediately appears. It's immediate manifestation.
Right.
Whereas here, it's more of a delay so that we have time to make adjustments,
Is that
right?
because we don't really believe it in 3D? It's the power of it's not just the thought, it's the 100, it's the intention. Like, because I can say in a self-affirmation, I love myself, but the
Yeah.
degree to which I truly believe that and my unconscious will manifest that reality, right? So you've really got to put an intent, deep intent to manifest.
Right. Well, it's not actually not so affirming that, like, it's not about affirmation so much. That's a technique that you can use, obviously, but it's not so much the affirming as it is the impression of the subconscious or the unconscious mind with a new belief where you're actually suspending old beliefs and old patterns from your past,
Mm.
and you're creating almost like neutrally, like you're, say for instance, Hollywood came to your door and said, hey, we want to give you $1 million and we want to pay you to create a character that has these attributes, these states. So like if you were to take your imagination and go neutral and not try to identify so closely with the character that you've played up into this point of Harry, and you just try to connect neutrally with, okay, what's the feeling of
Mm.
relief, for instance?
Mm.
Can you create a feeling of relief? Like just create it? Of course you can. You can
Mm.
go into your imagination. You can sense the feeling of, that's
Yeah.
wow, that's
Mm.
taken care of, right? It's literally that simple. Like if we can detach from our ego, and the ego is just what we identify with,
Yeah.
if we can detach from the story of Harry or the story of Alexis and just go into this beautiful space where we create a feeling of already having what it is we desire, without any attachment to the outcome, just the joy of it itself. Like he used to say, Neville would say, like, you need to start small. So he would encourage people to test their imaginations. And he said that the imagination is the Christ consciousness. So what you're doing is you're going in and you're imagining something like a flower or a sprout in your hand, a little pile of like soil in your palm, and you see a sprout come up out of it, right? And if you can imagine that, and it's joyful, it's light, there's no resistance because there's no attachment to the outcome of having a sprout, or
Mm.
there's no attachment to the outcome of having a ball. He would say, can you imagine the difference between a tennis ball and a baseball? And if you can, then you can do any scene. You can create any imaginatory scene, but it's the difference of the lightness to it. So what people normally do is they have a lot of resistance around certain like assumptions of their life. If they want to imagine a new home, they have a whole bunch of things of how's that going to happen? And
I don't deserve it.
I don't
That
deserve
runs in the
it,
background. Yeah.
right? You have all these subconscious beliefs that are still running. But if you can just for that moment, if you can just detach meaning from outcome or expectation, if you
Yeah.
can just suspend that for just that moment,
Yeah.
then everything opens up for you and manifestation becomes very easy after that. It's like it's really about as within, so without. So you're
Right.
creating it first here, and that's why the Kabbalah says that. It talks, the Hermetic texts talk about that because it is so very true that we are trying to create something first out here, and then somehow we're
Mm.
going to feel it within. It's the
Yeah.
opposite.
And everyone's creating, including myself here. I think a lot of people, and I'm not judging as much as just noticing within myself that we are in loops. Everyone's in loop cycles, and then
Yeah,
we wonder, and then if we're not conscious about it, we'll go, well, they don't realize you're in a loop, and you blame other people. But actually, it's because you're creating that loop based upon what you deserve and based upon projecting out too much that it's the other that's causing the problems. When, like you said, it's actually your own internal stuff that is creating that reality of that person so you can learn the lesson, right?
exactly.
So,
Yes. And if you can stop the loop, it's just momentum, right? So if we have a momentum of, I don't have enough, or I'll never be able to afford that, or whatever the lack mentality may be, if you can just stop the wheel long enough to go into like, I create like a space of either like the void, like a black void. I just start floating in my mind for a little bit to try to get back to the present moment. Or I mantra an I am activation. I start mantraing I am. Because when you get into like knowing your oneness with God and you start realizing and embodying that, I am quickly brings you back to the infinite possibilities of the present moment. That's where your power is right now. There's no
yeah,
such thing we know as time. There's no past or present, I mean, or future. There's only the present moment. So that's where everything is possible. And so if you can get back into that quickly, like with a mantra or with a new loop, that's what that is a loop, but it's a loop for the betterment of your life. It's a loop that brings you into power versus, victimhood.
yeah,
And that's what I remind my clients of. I start the first week with them saying, okay, first of all, I need you to know that you're the watchman at the door of your mind all day long. Start paying attention to what you're paying attention to. Like if you can become mindful enough of what your dominant thoughts are, then you can start course correcting and saying, wow, like I'm spending a lot of my currency, a lot of my energy paying attention to things that don't serve me, what others have done and what, happened 10 years ago or what I'm going to do 10 years from now. Like nobody is really living where their power is, which is right here and right now. And that is what I'm here to do. I'm so passionate about reminding people of this gift because once you tap into it, like I had a client yesterday, it
Mm.
made me almost cry. I simply had her do this little exercise where, like I just did with you, where I said, okay, can you simply just go into like a blank room and create the feeling of harmony? And what does that feel like? So we went into like our imagination. We did a couple of deep breaths. She created a feeling of harmony. And do you know what she said she was feeling right there? She said, I feel my shoulders dropping and I
Mm.
feel my heart expanding. She goes, my whole body is relaxed. I said, now what happens when you're looping something that, like for instance, you have fear around or you have anger around. Your body tenses. There's a dis-ease that immediately is felt in the vessel.
Yeah.
And that's what the difference is. It's the difference of health and sickness, this stuff. Like it will quickly get you into flow and into alignment beyond anything I've ever done before this. Like, and I've done a lot of fasting and prayer in my life, but the kind of prayer that I was taught to do those all those years ago was the kind of prayer that was like begging God for clarity and begging
Yeah.
for this and begging for that. It wasn't proclamation and stepping into the power that he was trying to tell us. Like Christ said, when you pray, go into your closet, go within, and believe that what it is that you're praying is already yours.
And then you can move mountains, isn't it in the Bible? You can move
Yeah,
mountains with that,
exactly.
literally.
You say to this mountain, be removed, it will be removed. And so what he was doing was reminding people of this same thing, that everything you have need of is within, but you have to recognize the divinity within, or you won't get in touch with it. You'll be on the outskirts of it. You'll be on the border of it your whole life. And
Yeah.
that's what I was for a lot of years. And when I finally started to, come into that awareness, Neville really stepped it up because he helped me like actually test this power within. And I started with small tests. I started with a baseball. Then I started with my son's impacted tooth. And what was interesting was all the tests were around my son. Well, Neville, his analogy of this gift is that our imagination is like the Father within, and our manifestation, the man embodying, God, is the fruit in hand. It's the manifestation. So the Son is the manifestation, the imagination is the Father, and there's this connection, this divinity connection. It's so powerful. So I started with the ball. I go into my imagination back in 2020 and I said, okay, I'll just test it. I'll just see what this is about. And I did two little imagination scenes where I closed my eyes. I did a couple of deep breaths. I could turn the ball in my mind. I could feel the baseball in my hand. It was just fun to do. I could feel the stitching. I
Yeah.
could feel the weight of the ball. I kind of tossed it between my two hands in my mind. And I did this two times for like 30 seconds a piece on my lunch break back then. And I go home on a Friday and I walked past my kid's room and I was drawn to my son's bed. Not my daughter's bed. They shared a room, but my son's bed.
Mm.
And I don't know why. Normally on a Friday, I would have taken off to the beach because I lived 5 miles from a beach in Florida, or I would have gone to the bar, the Moose Lodge, and had a drink with some buddies. I wanted to go clean under my son's bed on a Friday.
All right.
So this is the way that manifestation unfolds. The how is not important. It's a natural like desire that comes into your heart. It's
Yeah.
it's called inspired action. And I go under the bed and I pull out this little Pokemon box that he had of what we used to play in this box all the time. All they were cards normally. And I open the box and there in the box is a baseball.
Well.
And I thought, well, that's a coincidence, right?
Mm.
The logical mind kicks in and it's like, oh, that's just silly. That's just a coincidence. So I called him up and I said, hey, where'd you get this ball, Bubba? And he goes, what ball? And I said, the baseball that's under your bed. Where'd you get it? I'm trying to like be an investigator now, right?
Yeah.
And he says, no, Mom, I don't know about a baseball. I don't know who would have given me that. I gotta go, blah, blah, blah. Hangs up on me.
Mm.
So I said, okay, well, I'm going to try one more small test. So I go into my imagination that night And I imagined that when I picked up my children on that Sunday, because they were with their dad for the weekend, that when I picked him up, his first thing out of his mouth would be, "Hey, mom, look, my baby tooth came out over the weekend." We had had this problem for years where his baby teeth were not, they were becoming impacted. They weren't coming out naturally. And I was about to have to fork out some money as a single parent, right, in a single income home to have it extracted. So I didn't want to have to do that. So I just said, well, I'm going to use this as an opportunity. And I saw his little face like light up. I saw him jut his hand out, from the back seat to the front seat. And I saw the little tooth in his hand and I grabbed his hand. Like I saw the whole scene, right? And I'm really good with hearing audible voices in my imagination. So I could hear him perfectly well. And it was just so real. I created this cool little scene that
Hmm.
felt absolutely real in my imagination. So I went to bed that night. Neville said that the state akin to sleep, the time right before you're dozing off, is a really powerful time to impact the subconscious. So I did that. And then Sunday rolls around. So I only did it on Friday night, believe it or not. By Sunday, I go to pick them up. I thought this was going to take a few weekends. I didn't know this was going to literally happen this quickly, but it did. I go to pick
Yeah.
him up, and the
Hmm.
first thing out of his mouth, "Hey, mom, look, my baby tooth came out over the weekend."
Well,
Pulls,
yeah.
juts his hand right to the front seat, shows me the tooth. Everything played out exactly like I had.
Wow.
And my whole body, I just, like
That's
from,
like a manifestation on someone else. That's not even your own manifest. I mean, you did it, the manifestation, but that's for someone else, for
yes,
how
that's
the quantum works, right?
that's what Christ was trying to say is that
Right.
this is not for just us. We are not separate from one another. We are all in this infinite pool of source consciousness. So even though it seems very real that there's something outside of ourselves, that little boy, your mom, your dad, your exes, whoever it is, you're not separate from any of it, Harry. None of us are.
Yeah.
So that's not really another. That's just an
No, good
aspect
point.
of myself, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But we can help aspects of ourself in everyday life. Like I do this for neighbors, I do this for friends without them even knowing it. Like I'm always thinking the highest for people
Yeah.
because I feel like that's the gift that this work has given me is the ability to help. And I don't want any kudos for it. What I get is the gift of love and healing that comes. I mean, there's stories that I wouldn't even be able to share with anyone because they would be like, oh, that's, nice try trying to take that. No,
Mm.
these were very specific scenes that I've seen for people that have come to fruition
Yeah.
that they were so excited about. I would never say to them, you know what, I sat in imagination around that for you. No, but I do
Nah,
it for my
yeah, yeah,
kids.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do it for my kids all the time.
Well, that goes on to the what the Bible says about if you do it for other people and you want attention for it, that creates ego and a problem already. And that actually stops the manifestation. That kind of thing will stop it. It truly has to be selfless and private. Um,
Yes, it's very private, and
because
I'm
the
very
ego can sneak in the back door in all kinds of ways the person doesn't even know about, and then they wonder, oh, it's not working anymore. Well, because you got your ego and pride involved in this, and now you think that is who you are, which is a very dangerous game to play.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
what I do is I just do it because I love the person and I want them. It's like Neville said, you can if you have a friend who is unemployed, imagine them employed. Or if you have someone in your life that's sick, imagine a phone call where they say they're well. This
Yeah.
is a gift of, like oneness. This is what I'm saying is that it is kind of like you're just doing it because you're in love with your whole life. You're in love with everyone that's a part of the play of this life. It's not a boastful, egoic thing. That's why I don't talk to people about my manifestations at all. I keep them very much in my closet, like Christ talked about, because that's where they belong. And he said that, go into your closet, pray, and God will reward you openly. Like what
Yeah.
you do in secret will be rewarded with fruit. And that's how I live my life because I don't have any interest in getting any kudos for any of it. It's not about that. It's about being able to like experience the reflection of love. And
Yeah.
so this kid was like this scene that played out was amazing and I was so excited. I wanted to share everything I could because I'm very transparent with my children and I've talked to them about spirituality their whole lives. So I'm on my way home and I'm telling them about this guy Neville that, talks about this power that we hold within ourselves. And, they're kind of like rolling their eyes, like, yeah, mom, great, good for you, right?
Mm.
And I get home and my son says, hey, mom, again, my son says, not my daughter, my son says, hey, mom, you want to go on a walk? And I said, absolutely, let's put up our stuff and we'll go. So we get out, we walk up to the door. Now, mind you, it was still daylight and we had grass between the car and the door. There was no driveway. We just had this little place in Florida that was very off the grid kind of thing. And we walk all of our stuff to the door and I don't see anything in my path, right? There's nothing in the path. We go on our little walk, we come back, and now in the path to the door is a little Chinese fortune.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
pick up the fortune, and I had been telling my son all about Neville, the whole walk, about his imagination and how he should start, imagining things that he desires and how fun it is. And I pick up the fortune, and it says, "Imagination is life's coming preview. Wait, imagination is life's preview of coming attractions."
Yeah.
What? Like, I just began to cry. Like, I knew that Source was reflecting back for me. Don't you see? Don't you see your power? Don't you see you're a creator? You're made in my image. Like, that was what was kind of downloaded in that moment. And I literally just began to weep because it changed my entire life from there. I started going bigger. I
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
imagining bigger and bigger things. And then when I finally was able, I did manifest quite a bit of money in my life at that time. Um, Came up to North Carolina, came back to North Carolina with that money to get my home back because my home was under the authority of some squatters. And I was able to afford a lawyer finally. And I got my house back. And when I got my house back, I said, you know what? It's time for a really good partner. Now, this is what gets really
Mm.
cool about partnerships because
Mm.
manifesting an aligned partner is probably one of like the highest or the top most sought after Googled things when it comes to manifestation.
Mm. Yeah. I can
Everybody
imagine.
wants like their SP, right? You
Yeah.
hear about the SP everywhere, my special person or my specific person. And I know Neville talked about specific people that you could, manifest specific people. I didn't have a specific person that I wanted to manifest, but I had an aligned partnership in mind, like the attributes of the person that I wanted. And this was so magical. So I get back into the house here, we settle in, and I said, you know what, I'm going to start getting off of all these dating apps because the sheer action of being on dating apps is the energy of I don't have a partner. I'm trying to get a partner.
It
Like
comes with
that's the
attachment, right? There's a strong, heavy attachment to that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, people are like, I don't have what I want, so I'm going somewhere to get it, right? I'm going to go on this app and order me up a good partner, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get me a good, I'm gonna go get me a good girl, right? On the
Yeah.
app. It's so crazy. It's like, a drive-through level of mentality. And I was on there for a lot of years in Florida. I was on all the dating apps, and it was just ridiculous the amount of like desperation energy that was in the field when I would be on
Mm.
those apps. And it was just got icky. And I said, you know what, it's time for me to discipline enough to say, okay, let's get out of that world and use this power. So
Yeah.
all I did was I went to sleep for a week, every night for a week.
Mm.
I went to sleep and I imagined myself curled up with this incredible guy who like was so open and open-hearted and open-minded and who loved my kids and who wanted to build a life and who was adventurous and spontaneous and generous and like had an amazing, like outlook on abundance. And I wrapped up all the attributes I wanted in a man and I
Yeah.
just curled up with those attributes, like the relief of having it. Like I created this relief. I created this sense of love. I created a sense of like home and family with this person.
Yeah.
I created all the feelings within without having to see anything. I didn't want any attachment to the outcome. I had joy in my heart when I did it. And that's the key. It's like when you start attaching to any of these outcomes is when you're pushing the thing away versus a
Yeah.
magnet, like being a magnet for it. And I kid you not, a week goes by
Hmm.
and I was big into UT at the time, right? And I get on Discord because there was a group on Discord that someone recommended I get involved with. So I go on Discord and I get a message right away that pops up and it says, "Hey, stranger, do you know how to use this app?" And it's my old friend from New Orleans. I grew up 2 blocks away from. He was like my best friend growing up in those middle school and high school years. His name's Aaron, and he got on the same app as a
Hmm.
new user the
Yeah.
exact night that I was getting on the app as a new
Y-
user.
yeah. Mad.
Isn't that
Yeah.
okay? And
Yeah.
so I said, "Oh my gosh, I've been thinking about you. How have you been?" And we start chatting, and he says, "I lost your number. I got locked out of my Facebook account, and we used to, message on Messenger." And he said, "I got locked out a couple of years ago, and I've been looking for you ever since. Like, how are you doing?" And one thing led to another, and we have a reunion that same year in New York City, and we get to know each other again, and we marry 2 years later. Like,
Yay. Yeah. Yeah.
this unfolding of perfection. Like it was so magical and it was so fairy tale like. And I didn't imagine any of that because I left that up to source. I left that up to God and the universe to say, however it's going to come about.
Yeah.
But I lived in the end, like Neville talks about. He says that if you live in the end of your desire, if it's all wrapped up in a bow and you have it in hand, how does that feel? And that's where I lived from for that week. And it was like, I mean, it's one of my most proud moments in manifestation and in this work because it's built a life for my kids. Like we've had a beautiful family life ever since. And my kids have, in their very formative years have had a man who really wanted to know them as people, wanted to know me and deepen his walk in spirituality, and just everything came together so beautifully. So yeah, Neville has impacted my journey quite a lot with how I live every day, you
Yeah.
know.
I love so obviously I haven't taken Never God as deep as you, but I do have understanding that because I don't imagine to that extent, but you'll often find me imagining what I want out of life. And I find imagining easier when
Yeah.
I'm in a better place and when I'm not desperate. Because when I was desperate, I would imagine being out of it, and it took a long time to get out of that situation. But when I imagine now,
Mm.
I you could say selfish, but I imagine what I know, what I actually know I'm going to become because I've walked this journey now. I understand soul contracts. I understand all the challenges, all the mission, and I understand the potential to fulfill what my soul contract is. So I often find myself, if like with my partners or close friends, not with everybody, I would share. And sometimes people have misinterpreted that as me talking from ego, but actually I'm just sharing what is my thoughts of what I'm going to become. But I must say it's long in the future. But I don't see a problem with imagination. I don't see a problem imagining what you're going to be like near the end of your life, because if you do imagine that deeply and know with certainty you're going to become that, your brain is going to give you the baby steps that you might not know now to get to that point from A to Z. So if you imagine Z as your final goal and you deeply believe that and know that in your heart, it's not like tomorrow Z's going to manifest because you've got to go through a lot of growing, but your brain will give you the right people at the right time or the right suffering or the right circumstances. Oh, I'm here now and I've met this person. So I love imagination, and I don't know where we'd be without. I understand, like you, there's no such thing as time, but we're subject to time here, and the past is important to learn and grow, but the future is where I find my happiness, my power, my certainty, my belief in myself, my inner knowing that everything happens for a reason in the present, whilst I'm crying and suffering and feeling heartbreak and all these things. It's my future knowing that I go to quite a lot, and especially when I'm in a good mood, I do it naturally. I do it less so. I think most humans are like this. I don't have a protocol. So when I'm not feeling so good, I don't tend to imagine. But when I'm feeling good, I just go there into that place and I'll imagine it. with complete, like with certainty. Because the only thing I know, I don't know your journey, I don't know anyone's journey, but I have a deep inner knowing about what I am contracted to do here. So that knowing drives me forward. And then, yeah, I just find it fascinating, the whole topic of the future. I've also accidentally, Alexis, like yourself, I didn't take God, I didn't study Goddard, but back in the day, I'd imagine selfish things, I guess, looking back at it now. Like, this is going to be quite, I guess, people are going to judge me a little bit, but I was into like talking to girls on the streets and cold approaching them. It actually changed my life because it got me outside of my head and all these things. But I would imagine, I went for a phase where I would imagine walking up to a girl or in the club or the streets and the clubs, and I would imagine obsessively like just talking to her for like a minute and then kissing her, like just
Mm.
that fast. And I did it. And the thing is, I had so much trauma in me that this imagination would almost be delusional if someone could see who I was at that moment. But I imagined it so much that it came to fruition. I'd walk into a club, I'd be nervous, and then all of a sudden I'm talking to a girl. I've no idea what I'm saying. I'm just in the moment because I've imagined it, and then boom, I'm kissing a girl and she's into me.
Yeah.
And then I'd freak out because I wouldn't know how to hold attraction and all these things. So I'd only imagined the kissing. I hadn't imagined the depth of a relationship, keeping it going, and all these
Um,
things. So
yeah.
imagination is it's what are we without imagination? Without an
Every
exciting future, what are we?
everything stems from it. That's what's so beautiful about it. But like, so the the I am, aspect of this is really powerful. Neville said that if you get in touch with the I am and you can sit like before bed and just kind of say it over and over and over, that I am within will activate over time if you're able to practice it. Like again, I said it's a muscle. This is a muscle that we have atrophy as we get into adulthood because we're so programmed here to disassociate with, delusions. But the word delusion actually means that we're coming out of the illusion, right? Which is this. This is the illusion. This is
Yeah.
the projection that we're projecting onto the screen of space and time. There's really nothing here. I mean, science has already proven that whatever you put under those major, those big time, what do they call them? What do you call them? Like magnifying glasses or
Yeah.
microscopes, that's the word, thank you. Whatever you put under those, there's like 99.99% empty space. It's just a couple of floating molecules and neurons, right? And I'm not science minded enough to know all the technical words, but I just know that science is now running parallel with this work of consciousness because when you break it down, our true identity is pure consciousness. That's all we are.
Yeah.
We are not these bodies, first of all. We are definitely not these meat suits. So you know that there's something way more like energy based, vibration based going on here. And all you're doing is attuning to the vibration of having what it is that you're imagining. But if you haven't dealt with some of the self-concept issues that you have around who you view yourself as. If you just start going and imagining being with a supermodel, but you don't have a self-concept of loving yourself first
Yeah.
and stepping into this new character of the Harry that, absolutely knows his worth and knows how powerful he is and knows that he can absolutely step into a space with someone and hold sacred space.
Wait, your microphone, you turned it off? I can't hear you. Did you turn it off by accident?
Oh,
Yep, there we
oh
go.
no.
Yeah, you just a second
Can
ago
you hear
you
me
turned it
now?
off. Here we go, you're back. Yeah.
But if you haven't dealt with this self-concept issue of, well, who am I going to show up as in this story, and who do I see myself as? And if you don't deal with some of the forgiveness, like some people hold on to these old stories so
Yeah.
like concrete, like this is who I am. I can't let that go because then I won't be.
It breaks my heart, Alexis. Like I like obviously I understand everyone's got a different journey, but when I see it on Facebook and with friends in my real life, I don't I I can't compute from who I am how someone can do that to themselves. because not to boast, but I find letting go very easy. Like I'm just constantly moving forward. And I think the reason I find letting go and forgiveness so easy, the main reason is I know where I'm headed so strongly. How can I hold on to not forgiving that thing in the past because I'm always genuinely growing? But I feel really bad, like that people are doing that to themselves. It kind of breaks my heart a little bit, like the forgiveness thing. Like,
Well, it's like the NDE world says, when you studied as many as I have, you really have so much understanding of the fact that every road leads back to home. Every single path, no matter if you take satanic, if you're a Satanist or you're into Catholicism or you're a Buddhist, it doesn't matter what path you take. Whatever resonates for you will all the paths lead back to home. It
yeah,
all leads back to source. And that's what these NDEs are good for, is that it reminds us don't pity anyone. Everyone comes in here to this journey with a pre-birth plan of, listen, I want to hit these bullet points. I want to
yeah,
go through this experience, whether it's on the surface, it looks really dire or it looks really difficult. It doesn't matter what the situation is. If we're sitting around and in a low level, pity party for others,
yeah,
then we're no better than, like cursing them basically. What we should be doing is seeing them in their highest and in their
true.
divinity,
Yeah,
especially people who come in and they choose really difficult lives of, you know, either poverty or handicapped or whatever. Those are the people who are actually the most advanced. And that leads me to the next topic, which is so exciting.
yeah.
Telepathy tapes. Have you listened to the telepathy tapes?
I know what telepathy is. No, I don't know what they are. No.
Oh my gosh, Harry. So last year, this documentarian made a podcast called the Telepathy Tapes. They're on YouTube, they're everywhere,
Wow.
Spotify, whatever. And they blasted even like some of the biggest podcasts out of the water, like Joe Rogan. They just like blasted them off of the number one slot, and they took the
Wow.
number one slot for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And what was so fascinating about this podcast, because they're making it into a documentary, is that they were talking about these families that were sending email after email after email to this doctor who studies she's like a neuro scientist who's, I guess, specialized in autism and like the non-speaking world. So she was getting all these emails from families saying, listen, I think my son or my daughter, who is a nonverbal autistic child, is
Right.
reading my mind.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
What what's so fascinating about this story is that these children and these adults who are autistic, who are going through this, who signed up to have these kind of lives, are the very people who are going to wake this planet up. Because in this podcast,
Right. Yeah.
they were passing, I'm talking like the the science behind it was fascinating. They would test these children and they would have like their parent go upstairs to another room, pick a random book off of the shelf, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the child down below who had, a spelling board in front of them or a keyboard, they'd have the parent open randomly to a page and look at a sentence in the book. And then the child on the first floor would actually type out exactly the sentence that the parent was looking at upstairs.
Whoa. And they're autistic, are they? They're
And they're nonverbal autistic.
non-verbal. Jeez.
And in this podcast, they interviewed teachers, they interviewed all these families who had autistic children who were having these experiences with them where they were really like, something's going on here. And by the end of the podcast, I was buying the book of the teacher who had
Oh,
had an
yeah.
autistic child from
Yeah.
from the UK, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Yeah.
once I turn you on to this woman, you're going to want to go like see her in person because she's like
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But she was a teacher in the UK, like a kindergarten teacher, or a what do they call it there? Right before
We
kindergarten or
get kindergarten too. Yeah. Yeah. Kindergarten. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so she was a kindergarten teacher, and there was a child named Asher, and Asher started speaking to her telepathically, and she was kind of freaked out at first because she was like, "Are you really talking to me? Like I can hear your thoughts." It was just wild. and
Oh,
they have spanned, I don't know, like 20 some years together doing this work together where he has given her all this information about the realms, all the different dimensional realms that are here in
wow.
creation.
Yeah.
As he's described what manifestation is, which was what I mentioned, where you basically in imagination, you're tapping into 4D, the fourth dimension, and
Yeah.
you're overlaying it onto the third dimension, he says. And he gave this amazing example to her where he's nonverbal, he's like in his 20s at this point, and they went on a train ride. He might have been a little younger even, I don't know, but in the book, she describes that they were on the train, and he says, let me describe what manifestation is. I want you to imagine this water bottle here. I want you just to imagine it on the other side of the table. He said, and what's going to happen is something's going to come along to make this happen that is going to seem very natural to the human mind and the logical mind. You don't have to worry about how. You just let the how go, which is what Neville talked about. Don't worry about the how.
Yeah.
Just live in the end of that bottle is from this point to that point. That's all you need to worry about. So, Jess is her name. So Jess says, okay, so she imagines it from this side of the table to the complete opposite side of the table. And then they go about talking on the train, and an hour or so goes by, and the train conductor comes down to check their tickets, and he randomly takes the bottle
Mm. Yeah.
and moves to the other side of the table.
Well.
And when I heard that, right, I got so excited because basically these kids are able to like confirm. I mean, this guy, this young man, he talks about what like Darius Wright talks about when he goes out of body, that there are 12 realms, there are 12 levels to creation here in
Right.
our particular universe, and that the different realms have different levels of consciousness that we're tapping into in those, right?
Yeah.
And so if you get a chance, please check out the telepathy tapes. It'll change your
Wow.
life. These
Yeah, I
kids,
will. I will.
they're gonna change the planet. I guarantee you. I promise you.
Yeah. I always knew autistic kids were special. Now that I'm into soul contracts and understanding, when I see autistic and disabled kids now, my reframe based on truth is I send thoughts to them of love and I go massive respect. I don't want to judge anyone, but I go massive respect to you because you're like a brother to me because you've chosen a fucking hard mission. So I don't look at them as poor me, isn't it horrible to be in their body? I look at them as extremely brave souls like myself, you, and many other people here.
Yes, exactly.
Because I understand we're all going back to God and we're all
We,
going to get there, but it just seems because we only seem to know this reality right now as our own existence, which isn't true. But it seems like there's a difference between the bravery of souls that take on certain missions to either get the job done into other realms and go completely into Christ consciousness in this lifetime, which is a whole different topic. Because from what my understanding of Christ consciousness is, from what I've seen, there is currently more people in Christ consciousness on the planet right now because of all the past lives, reincarnations, and essence than there's ever been. And so the bravest souls to me are those that choose the autistic body, not only because of the pain and suffering that they go through, but also the parents and the parents of disabled people. The parents get a lot of value, and they're forced into a role of unconditional love with a child of God, which is their child. So
yeah.
my outlook has completely changed on suffering because I noticed in our communities, and even I've been guilty of this. Sometimes I used to go more into, well, I'm a bigger victim than you, and I understand that mindset when I was going through my worst. I definitely understand that when you're going through incredible suffering, your mind warps from reality, and yes, your suffering is real, but you get delusional and think that other people aren't suffering as much as you, and that's not reality because
Right.
actually everyone is suffering to varying degrees, and I'd also don't subscribe to the idea that we're all souls here, and there is no such thing as NPCs and all these things. Everyone's got their own soul contract. Everyone's going to have loved ones die. Everyone's going to get heartbreak. Everyone's going to experience suffering. The degrees of that only vary in the current incarnation that you're experiencing. They will go through extreme sufferings, either past or future, because we're all one and because we're all going back to the same thing. And I also resonate with what you're saying that we want to become like God because God is unconditional love. And when you said about imagination, my first thought was, well, what is God? God is imagination. God has an imagination of what Earth looks like and all these frequencies. He imagines it with no outcome because he's God. He's the all-loving, all-powerful one, and he just creates it
Yeah.
infinitely. And he gives us that capability to act a little bit like him on this earth, what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven on earth. So we all
Yes.
have these powers of manifestation. And even if you don't do manifestation, what I've noticed is that suffering upon you, if you get awareness from it and find the spiritual nugget underneath the suffering and grow from it, that will be your awakening. That will push you more into the present. We're here not to be so warped from the past or the future, and we all are to varying degrees. But the healing comes when you narrow that gap from, like, say, trauma happens to you, extreme trauma. You're now so much in the past or the future. But as you heal, you co-merge naturally. Your natural baseline comes more and more closer to the present, more and more closer. You add in techniques like Neville Goddard, all the healing things we do, and we co-merge till eventually you in some incarnation will merge completely with the present. And
Yeah.
that changes the game for everybody. But the most of all, I do understand we do it for other people, but I think deep down, because other people are us. Deep down, we're just searching for inner peace. Everyone is searching for the present moment for themselves. That's what how I interpret it for me. And when you do find your present and you get close to the present, you can bring more value and joy and more unconditional love and understanding for everyone's journey. Now all of a sudden you have empathy, compassion going off. Now all of a sudden you're not seeing a personality much. You're seeing just someone that's come here like you that's same as you.
Yeah, and it's really powerful when you realize that, it's not about the things that we do here. That's what the NDEs really helped me with because I always had this like feeling of guilt that I wasn't doing enough here, like producing enough
Yeah,
outcome or like,
yeah,
like success or whatever it was. And the NDEs have really helped with that because the main message that they get from the spirit guide or from if they meet Christ or they meet Buddha, it doesn't matter who they meet over there. It's usually whatever they were brought up with is they tend to meet, like whatever they were very comfortable in knowing spiritually. But Christ does come around a lot in the NDE world. And so a lot of the takeaway is it's not about what you're doing. It's about what you're being to others. It's about the love. It's about the connection. And if you don't get that, if you're not paying attention to how you're treating other people and how you're treating yourself, like Darius says that the greatest sin is the one you don't forgive yourself for. And
yeah.
that is so powerful. That is, it was so enriching when he said that because Darius, I don't know if you're familiar with Darius Wright's work, but
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, he's an active out of body experiencer since he was 16 as well. That must be some kind of like cyclical thing, at 16 that the spirit uses. But he's been doing that for many, many years, and he teaches people how to do it. And what
Yeah,
he's learned from going over to the other side of the veil, it's a controlled NDE basically is that there is no such thing as like what we like to say here as good and evil or right and wrong. It's
yeah,
very
yeah,
neutral over there. It's actually, and we don't get judged by some guy on a throne. Like we're judging ourselves because we are the embodiment of God's source energy. That's why when the life reviews come up for these people, they're saying, I wasn't judged by anyone. I was the one doing the judging. I was like,
yeah.
man,
And you're love bombed. I'm not love bombed in a bad sense. You're unconditionally watched and loved whilst you feel bad for the things that you've done that you didn't know you've done. Because most
exactly.
people aren't bad. Most people act unconsciously. Look, when I get my life review, I know I'm going to be shown things that I hurt people unconsciously. Now I know about life reviews. I've tried to think about where I actually consciously hurt people, but I'm
Yeah.
aware that I have definitely unconsciously done things either to strangers or friends or partners. So the love is the only way to learn is to have someone unconditionally love you whilst you get to experience the hurt you've caused others. There's no other way for humans to learn. If you've got someone going like this, like you're a bad boy whilst you're showing all your bad things, that doesn't work with mum and dad doing that to us. So why is it going to work on the life review? You know?
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. No, I think it's really powerful because like once I realized that I wasn't, having a finger pointing session with God all the time, like he wasn't up in the clouds going, "How dare you?" Like
Yeah.
when I realized that, like life lightened up a lot. And I love the study of this information because all it is just a reminder of like what's really going on and what's really important is not the things that the world tries to tell you is important. What's important is the kingdom of heaven is within you. And if you can connect with that, if you can, like they say in the scripture, be still and know that I am God. How still are people being right now? They're
Yeah.
not. They're not slowing down enough to get in touch with what's really their power. That's their power point, is the kingdom of heaven within. So when you can be still and know that you are God within, that God is everything and everyone, there's nothing here but God. There's nothing here but God's source energy. So the thing that we struggle with the most is I'm separate from him, I'm separate from her. How dare she do that? How could that have happened to me?
Yeah.
But you are everything and everyone. That's the thing, is that when you start lining up with that great I am and you realize how powerful you really are within, like everything you do starts to morph. Everything you go to say, you go to put your hands to, you're doing it with intention because you realize, oh my gosh, if I come in at this angle from like a lower vantage point, it's not going to serve my life the way it would if I tune my alignment to God again. Let me go back to God. Let me go back to the I am within, the
Yeah.
kingdom. Let me go back through those gates. And then your power comes back online and you can feel it because this is all internal. What I'm telling you has nothing to do with anything that you do out here. It's all done within in the closet. It's all done in the kingdom. And if
Yeah.
people knew how simple it really was, then they wouldn't turn to their old stories. They would leave the stories in the dust. They would forgive themselves. They would forgive everyone around that story. And they would create a new one for themselves in the moment. And they would start saying, wow, I'm the writer, producer, and author of this new story. And I'm going to step into this right now.
Yeah, it can be done. I guess I'm judging, but in the new age, it can be done negatively, as in egoically, and actually with a sense of pride that causes separation more. So the people that say this, some of them do understand that terminology, but they're not being honest with themselves, and they're taking that to a point like of separation and pride and ego. I don't know. It's just things I observed on Facebook with some new agers. Like we don't realize. What I'm trying to say is you can't really lie to yourself or God. Like, so in this world, you can act like you are loving, you can act like you care about strangers, you can act like you care. But also, I've noticed you can actually lie to yourself about, instead of making it about a feeling good because you're doing it, you're more worried about your image and how that makes you look and a reaction than the actual internal feeling of feeling good just because it feels good to be connected to source. It's like a little inversion trick. So I've certainly noticed. The reason I
Well,
think I
what you
notice
do
it is
for
because I do it and I
Mm,
know that my path, my contract is the reason I'm so focused on it is because my contract says that if I want to get the peace that I know I'm going to get, I can't be a fool and a lie to myself. So I do not want to create that problem that I see in others. But the problem is I'm attached to that story. So I need to let go of the judgment of other people. But currently I'm doing it because I'm very aware that my love and my care has to come from my heart and not from like a reaction and validation of who I think I am.
yeah.
And that's another thing that saddens me in the community in the new age is a lot of people um, I just don't know anymore when I'm on Facebook. When I see beautiful words, unless I meet that person, I actually don't know. I've had enough burns to realize that I don't really know the heart space of that person. It doesn't mean the words aren't correct and I won't learn from them. There's a ripple effect from spreading good truth, regardless of, there's a ripple effect from spreading good truth, regardless of whether you're living and embodying that truth. But I want to be a person that speaks truth from a deep place and is not lying to myself. And that's a hard journey at this stage of my life. Just noticing, like,
Well, it's also, I think it's important that we take a lot of the labels away. Like I don't
right.
put any labels on myself anymore. There was a time when I would consider myself this or that, I'm I'm new age or I'm this or whatever. But
Yeah.
now I just know that I am. I know that I'm a part of God and all that is here is God. And so when I see others, I don't see them as separate from me. I see them on a journey through perspective, just like I'm going through. And there's many, many, many morphings of perspectives over the years that have I would be unrecognizable from when I was in those 18 years of monastic work to this day. I would not look like or sound like the same person because we go through these experiences for the contrast,
Yeah.
for the evolution, for the expansion. And I've done a lot of research into extraterrestrials and different dimensional beings and all these things as well. And one of the things that they say, I've heard somebody talk about this, is that these life experiences that we go through when we pass over are are like represent like it's almost like they can be tuned into from any dimension and they can learn from our experiences, much like we tune into television shows. Our lives can be tuned in the Akashic from
Right.
every dimensional space, and people can learn from what we do here and the experiences that we're going through. So it's almost like we're brothers and sisters in all of this,
I didn't
showing.
know that. That's a nice higher consciousness thought to think about. Yeah, yeah. You're not just doing it for your collective and the human experience, but from other dimensions. Because I do
From
feel this is a
other
very hard. It's a very. I know it's said a lot, but I feel like this is a real suffering school. Like it's very
Well, if
hard.
you proclaim that, like that's the
Yeah,
we have to be careful about what we're proclaiming and what we're putting meaning on because even like the Course in Miracles, the first lesson in the Course, I don't know if you're familiar with the Course in
yeah,
Miracles, but
yeah, yeah.
okay. So this is Christ coming through and sharing this message and saying, listen, I was very misunderstood. I want to share with you what I was trying to say. And the first lesson in the course is to look around your room and say, I gave meaning to that door. I gave meaning to that picture. I gave meaning to this bed.
Right.
Because we put everything in this illusion, we put a label on, we slap a label on it, we
Yeah,
put all
yeah.
kinds of heavy meaning on. And just as easily as we do that, we can remove the meaning.
Right. Yep.
You remove meaning, guess what you remove as well? Suffering.
Right. And one reason we're attached to our suffering is because I feel what inspires people the most is a hero's journey, which starts with a load of suffering that you transmute, right? So the way to get to humans to inspire them on the deepest level is an incredibly long, a lifetime's worth of many incarnations, hero's journeys, right?
Yeah, I'm
But
sure that it's like
but you can
painful.
shorten it. And I do understand what you're saying. We seem to make it longer, the final destination. And
Well, the
I'm
ego's
definitely
tricky.
okay with
Like
that because we live many lives, right?
ego wants.
We don't get it done in one job. We don't get, you're not you from this lifetime. You're a you that's accumulated a wealth of wisdom that you were born to, from many lifetimes, right? To get to this point.
Yeah, but I also think that like once you start realizing that suffering can be very minimal, it's first of all, it's not our duty as individuals to worry about what that collective message will be. I think it's our duty to follow our highest excitements and interests and desires that are divinely ordered, or they wouldn't even be there. And
Yeah.
when you do that, when you get into the flow of what your heart really calls you to do and what your heart really wants to express, and you start focusing solely on your lane and stop worrying about all the 8 lanes next to you or beside you, that's the problem we're having is that people are so concerned about things outside of themselves. And it's not
Yeah.
selfish what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that it's what Christ talked about.
Yeah.
Go into your closet, pray in secret, and Source and God is going to reward your life openly. And he also said to the apostles, he would say stuff like, stop looking here or there. The kingdom of heaven is within you.
Yeah. It's
But
under
what,
your
but
nose.
what we're But
It's
what
right
we're
here.
doing is
Yeah.
we're looking here and there. We're trying to figure out all this stuff out here. It's not out there. It's all in here, in your closet, in your kingdom. And if you bring it right back to that present moment and you say, oh my gosh, here I am. I'm looking outside of myself again. I'm looking over here at this person's journey and judging it, or I'm looking at this person's experience and saying, maybe I can help. But when you really are supposed to help someone, all of creation wraps around that situation and brings that person or that scenario into your field, and it happens very naturally. We don't have to force that to happen, you know?
Right. Yeah.
What we have to be worried about and concerned with, and not even worried about, that's the wrong word, but what we should be paying our attention to, because that's our currency, is our energy field. Where your attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
So if you're paying attention to all the labels and all the stories and all the this and all the that, you're outside of the present moment.
Yep.
You're
Yeah.
outside of your power field. And when you get into the field again, if you come back to the field again, that present moment has all the infinity of possibilities. That's why, psychics will say to you, hey, like the dominant frequency right now is that this is going to happen, but that can change. And why
Yeah.
can that change? Because our frequency can change. So when our frequency changes, we tune to a different, belief, we loop a different thought, then our frequency shifts. So if all you're doing is like staying in the loop of something outside of yourself,
Even a
then
collective loop, like if you're worrying about a global economy 24/7, or if you put that mindset, everyone's doing that in the conspiracy, not everyone's doing it, but people in conspiracies do that, and they're manifesting the very things that we created.
exactly.
COVID, we created all these things. We
Yeah, we
created
did. And that's why I started like not paying attention. I think it's important to be aware of the deception that goes on here and the contrast here. That's why I was studying David Icke back in like the early 90s because I
Yeah.
was like, what is going on, right? There's something not right about this. And it led me down the conspiracy path for many years, and it was aggravating and frustrating and like fear-based and all that stuff. But when I got out of it and I said, you know what? Okay, it's good to know.
It's good to
It,
know.
it is good to be awake that all this bullshit's going
But
on.
not
Sure.
attached to knowing to the not attached to knowing to the point where you're
Yeah.
knowing something in right or wrong language is more important. It creates more importance in your head than the heart and the love. You're basically
Yeah.
saying, I would rather be right because I've manifested this collective situation by my knowing. I'd rather be right than feel love and connection and divine union, and that
That's the
is,
sad part that happens. Yeah.
and it will keep
Again,
happening until, yeah. Yeah.
everybody has to go there. Everybody has to experience the awakening in that way, and in order to go back, because again, we all wake up. We all wake up from the dream. This is just a waking dream. The Course in Miracles says that, the beginning of the Course is so powerful because it says nothing real can be threatened.
Right.
Nothing
Yeah.
unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So everything here, though, on the third dimension can be threatened. So you know that none of this is real. None of it is. It's
Mhm.
all an illusion. That's why I do live my life in delusion. I go and I demystify the illusion of what I'm seeing on the 3D plane, and I go into my imagination and I overlay what I prefer. And I
Yeah.
live from that space because when I live from that space, my closet is full of everything that I want to experience, the love, the unconditional love, the connection. Like I may not see it in my 3D just yet, some of the things that are in my closet, but I'm living it
Yeah.
inwardly. And that's what the message of Neville was about and the message of Christ was about. Go inside,
Yeah.
live in that kingdom of heaven, and God is going to reward. It can't help but be rewarded. It can't help but be mirrored and reflected. That's the power of this work, is that it's like it is a universal law. These are universal laws, the laws of assumption, whatever we assume. And just listen to the things that you say. Like I had to listen to the stuff I was saying. Like you said something earlier, and it's not to like judge what you said, but you said something like, you know,
I'm still
something I
learning.
won't see for, you said something like, I won't see that for years. Well, that's
Oh,
an
yeah.
assumption.
That's a
That's an
story. Yeah.
assumption,
Yeah.
right?
True.
That's a
Yeah.
story. It could be that you go into your imagination tonight and you know, you start with something that makes you feel really good about your life, like, somebody hands you a nice cup of coffee tomorrow for free or something, right? And you just do something really small. And then you build from there and you go. And as you do these things, your confidence in this beautiful gift that you've been given as a creator will start to unfold in ways that will be so synchronistic, and
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about how they're going to come about,
Yeah,
nor
no.
should you.
No.
You should just sit in the beautiful things of like, well, this is what I want to see. Like, this is what I want to experience in this life. And you don't have to go by any timeline because there is no time. You just have to like sit in the awareness that this is my new experience. This is just what I experience is everything I desire. Like when you said something like, I want to see the end of I want to be this by the end of my life. Well, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to be that
Tomorrow.
right now? Right
Yeah, yeah.
now.
Right.
You've got to live it here first because if you believe it now and you live it as if it's already happening now, that's the only thing we have is the present. So live it from that place, from that present moment, and then watch how life will start to, all the things, all the pieces will start coming together. He called it the bridges of incidents. And that little boy called it, he just said that the natural world will start swirling about to make it seem, normal and natural, right? Even this little kid is explaining that this is how creation really unfolds. That once you believe it, it's not seeing is believing, it's believing is seeing.
Right, yeah.
So when we start taking our attention away from what's going on the television, the big black box in our living room, and we start like returning to our sovereignty, then all of a sudden you're going to start seeing your life elevate in not only your mind, but in everyone around you will start mirroring back that level of sovereign levels of consciousness because we are
Yeah.
all manifesting, whether we want to call it that or not. I know that a lot of people are like put off by that word now, manifestation, right?
Mm.
But we do it anyway by default. Everyone does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone is manifesting in their lives at all times
Yep.
based on what they're assuming.
Yep.
So if you're assuming that, okay, well, it's gonna take me 10 years before I heal from all this trauma, then it'll take you 10 years to heal
Then
from all that.
it would take that long. I would caveat in saying that my final goal maybe in this life is to die before I die here, which is probably the hardest thing for a human to do if we're being very honest as well. So, I mean, I would
Powerful.
like the opportunity. I'm not sure if I'm soul contracted, if I'm being honest, but I do have shades of belief that before by the end of my life, I will sit completely one with God, where I won't need any techniques. I'll just be basking in the presence. I could be completely wrong, but my point of clarifying that is to say that obviously that might take a little, especially because I've not got nowhere near the self-awareness currently and the suffering to do that. So that's why I was thinking it might take a little time. And that's what I imagine a lot in my life, that I will be bask in the glory of God, in the peace of God, and surrender perfectly to the present moment at that point where you don't have to do anything anymore. It's just on autopilot. The brain, whatever you want to call it, surrender the soul, false self completely dying. We know it's possible. And
You mean
um,
like dying to the ego, like having the ego death kind of thing? Is that what you're talking
Completely, yeah. I've had
about?
reference experiences. Like I have some freaky experiences and understandings that I can explain to simple people. Not that I've experienced that, obviously, but completely. But I've had little things that make me think that that might be my destiny at some point in the future because I can explain things simply, and it's like a soul recovery. The soul doesn't actually sit when the chakras are misaligned through trauma. The soul doesn't feel comfortable and safe to sit completely in the body 100%. But when you die before you die and it's on autopilot, what happens is the chakras completely realign from 1 to 7, and then the soul has permission for the first time without any validation from external sources. Your soul sits perfectly, your astral body sits perfectly in the body 24/7. And then it's not like you don't evolve from that point, but now you're in the presence of God, and now you're in another stage of awakening, completely different to how we mostly embody it. So that could be the ideations of a young boy that's just desperate to heal. I'm aware of all these things, but I do look at my life and I think that could be a path. And I'm also aware that no, not next year, not 5 years, 10 years, but it's nice to imagine. Like it's a nice anything that makes you feel good is nice to imagine. To me, imagining being present, I've got to try and be present, right? I've got to like go, okay, here's a room. What does it feel like? Like you said, what does it feel like to be present? What does it feel like to have no thoughts? What does it feel like to have no story? What does it feel like to look at you and not logically know that you are? We all know that I also know that you're a soul and we're connected, but it's not a logical thing. It's a feeling thing that runs in your program 24/7. And that's the peace of God that we all get to.
Hmm.
But I feel in my heart it like there's a I don't know. I can say it now and I'll be okay with my life if I'm just kind of like more present generally. And I'll be okay. But I've always said that in my heart, and I don't really say it to a lot of people, because I'm worried that people are going to think I'm delusional, all these things. You don't want to make claims and all these things. But it's possible because I told you a lot of people are now sitting in perfection. There's a lot of healers out there doing their thing and it's perfect. But there's also healers that are literally sitting in the presence of God. I'm sorry, Alexis, not healers, just normal people in everyday places around the world. There's like a lady in a shop in South America. There's a little Asian man, and they're not speaking like Tolly. They are sitting in the presence of God. They might not know how they've done it, even. Some people do it by accident. Some people, and to clarify, the harder path that you make for yourself is if you want to be a teacher of Christ consciousness and how you done that process, more often than not, your story and your challenges make it longer because you're now not talking about unconsciously becoming in Christ consciousness. You're now talking about a conscious process that you've done to end the separation in your brain, which makes it harder for some reason because you're trying to consciously come back in that state. Once you've made that state and you try it, you'll be able to explain it to people, and that's where I think I'd like to be. I'd like to explain it in simple ways, the process, I guess, and not judge people and get them to where they need to go to.
Well, I think that there was a lot that you put into those statements, but I think what I took away the most was that when you say that they sit with God, Christ said to everyone he met that you will do what I do and more than me if you believe. He was
Yeah,
saying that God is just as much in every one of you as he is in me. There is no separation. So again, this
yeah,
is like a decision of, am I really separate from God, or is God really am I embodying the Christ consciousness?
yeah,
If you choose to live in the perspective of separation, then you
yeah,
certainly can. And people do. That's the predominant perspective of a lot of human beings, that they've chosen to look through the eyes of separation so that they can see what they are not. But
yeah.
really, all of our identification, every man, woman, child, animal, every living thing, every
It's
plant,
connected.
tree
It's
is
connected. Yeah,
is the not just connected, it's the embodiment of God. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Bashar, but Bashar says basically, and there's a lot of teachers and people who have, touched into the channeling of this information or the Akashic around this information, but
yeah,
basically saying that God splintered out into all these perspectives to see what he was not, or what it was not, to
right. Yeah,
experience to experience a little bit of a different, because if you're blissed out for eons of time,
you can't see
what
yourself.
right, wouldn't
You
you,
can't see yourself.
not only that, but wouldn't you want a little bit of variety? Like, wouldn't you want to have
Yeah,
a little perspective of something that you don't normally, see? So let's go down into these clay vessels, these carbon vessels, forget everything, and then try
yeah,
to figure out the puzzle, right? Like, that's the fun about this experience is, and the ones that aren't interested in the puzzle, the people that we view in the world, strangers or people on the streets that have zero interest in spirituality, are the
yeah.
ones that mirror back for us the most the pieces of compassion and
Wow,
patience.
yeah. That's a great perspective and true, isn't it? Yeah. They're the ones that teach us what we desire in our heart the most. The ones that
Well, they're the ones that challenge us the most. I know that.
challenge.
Like
Yeah,
when I talk to someone who has zero interest in knowing themselves or zero interest in knowing their true identity or their divinity, it's a challenge to try to have conversations because it's usually around the 3D. It's usually pretty vain and like materialistic and
Yeah.
not not of my resonance, right? And so I have to be very present with that and say, okay, that's their choice of life path. They've decided to come in here and really get into the 3D and really,
Yeah.
just chomp down on that 3D experience.
Me and you might have been in those phases in our past lives, right? I synthesize that by thinking I was like that. I was definitely like that for very long in my life. Like,
There's a lot of NDEers that say some of us just choose to come here and have vacation lifestyle where they've been through so many lifetimes of work or expansion or growth that they
want to
want
chill. Yeah. You
so
want to
they
chill, respect, have some beers, like life.
yeah,
Yeah. Just enjoy
exactly.
life.
Set up shop in Costa Rica and stay naked all day and drink all day or whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
The point is that because we don't know everyone's soul contract and we don't know what's behind the depth of that person or that path, there is no way for us to really pay attention to anything that they're going through because that's for them to go through. But
Yeah.
what we're supposed to go through is to be the embodiment of holding love and unconditional love at that for
Yeah.
every person that we meet because that is an aspect of God. That's within us. So that's you and that's you and that's you.
And God loves them unconditionally. God, like the Bible says, God pours the sunshine on whatever the biggest sinner is and the biggest saint. He doesn't love you or me more than whatever we deem an unconscious person because God God gave birth to every soul here.
Yes.
Every soul. And one thing I want to share with you that how I understand this too is unconditional love. The easiest way to tap into it, Alexis, is through you'd experience this, and I haven't experienced this. When you have a baby and a child, that taps into a little bit, like a tiny bit of the divinity that the feeling, not the logic, that feeling of unconditional love when your baby comes out is a little bit of the taste of how much God loves us. And how I use my soul contract and motivation to do what I do is God wants me to love him from my heart as much as he loves me. Because you're right, there's no separation and God loves everybody. However, if you sin, whatever that is, if you walk a path away from God and don't learn your lessons, you will feel less of a love of God and you will feel more dark, negative thoughts. And God actually wants us to love him back as much as he loves us, which is why I like Christianity. I've had my experiences like you with the warped version of Christianity, but the true
Yeah.
version of Christianity that I like is he wants you to love him unconditionally, and you can do it in a life review and we can wait a few lifetimes, but eventually in your life, everyone's life, God will say to you, okay, now you're ready. You are going to feel unconditionally loving for the present moment and for everybody. And then you can return to me and then go into those other frequencies because you've passed school. Like,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, I love that. And I think that, there's so much to be extracted from the scripture and from Christ's words. I do think there's been a lot of editing of things over the years. And I'm not, because I've read the scripture through and through a couple of times, there's been a lot of information in there that was like, that
yeah,
doesn't line up with this at all. Like, so there's been some, other research that I encourage people to do when it comes to Christ and the scripture specifically around Christianity, to dig a little deeper because there's so
yeah,
much to take away from other writings that correlate, like the Essene writings and the Gospel of Thomas and that sort of thing, stuff that was, left out of the canon, the Book of Enoch 1 and 2 and the Book of Jasher and the Septuagint. These are books that will expand on the Bible's information in ways that they didn't want people to really know about because again, it points back to God is within all of us.
yeah,
You are the operant power. Be careful what you're feeling and thinking and saying, and you know then your life will go according to plan. Like, stop believing what's outside of you. Stop believing all these things that are telling you what to think and feel, and start tuning in to the God state, because God is embodying these vessels within all of us. Everything that's here is God's
Yeah.
source energy. So
Yeah.
the moment that we step out of knowing that or believing that, we suffer.
Yeah.
And that's why Byron Katie's work is so powerful, where she says,
Yeah.
inquire, like, is this true? How can you know it's true? How do
Mm.
you really know that that thought is true? Well,
Mm.
did you put meaning on that thought? Did you give purpose to that thought? Because if you did, then it's true for you. Just like
Yeah.
they say, if a man claims himself to be weak and another man claims himself to be strong, they're both right.
Yeah.
They're both right.
Powerful. Hey, we've been
Yeah.
going on a while. Can I want to say thank you, by the way, for the you have to send me the link and I'll post up to the telepathy tales. I'm really interested in that.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
actually motivated me to take more seriously imagination. I do it unconsciously and I need to do it a bit more consciously because it makes me feel good. And like you said, it's going to manifest better things in my life. I think I need to do it not just big things, but I need to do little smaller chunks.
Yeah.
So before we go, is there any last words you want to say? And also your business, how can people find you?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. So my business is Imagine That Life Coaching. It's just www.imaginethatlifecoaching.com. And I also have a bio site. So it's biosite.alexishart, I believe it is.
We'll
We can put
post
a
the
link.
links definitely under the description
Yeah.
when we post it up too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Um, I I think what I would want to do for parting words, or what I'd want to say, is that anyone struggling out there with, feelings of darkness, where they feel, doubts or fear of any kind, that it really is a choice that we make each and every day, what state of being that we choose. Like, there's a state of fear, and then there's a state of love. There's a state of jealousy, there's a state of wrath, all these states that we can choose. And when you start becoming an intentional person, even if it's not with all the definitions of what Harry and I are talking about. If you just want to become more intentional with your life and more mindful of what you're experiencing, doing a little bit more like energy work within, where you start becoming the watchman at the door of your mind, and you start becoming aware of what you're putting out, because we're basically walking antenna. Start inquiring, what am I thinking about the most? What am I putting my attention on the most?
Mm.
And suffering becomes a lot less when you start really seeing that, oh, I'm paying a lot more attention to things that aren't serving me than things that are.
Deep.
And
Yeah.
my life changed completely when I started becoming mindful of that. And then there's so many resources that, I've mentioned throughout the Course in Miracles and the NDE work. Listening to any of those testimonials cannot help but empower you and give you a sense of peace here, because all of them are saying pretty much the same things, that it's about love, and it's about intention, and it's about presence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that helps.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Alexis, for being here. Thank you.
Yeah.